77 WABC invites you to a family fun day and softball showdown on July 20th with net proceeds benefiting Shriners Children's. John Sterling will call the game as the FDNY takes on the NYPD with special guests Dwight Gooden, Art Shamsky, 77 WABC hosts, including Sid Rosenberg, Anthony Cumia, Lionel, Dominic Carter, and many more. For more info and to buy tickets, go to ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org. That's ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org. The More Money Show with Steve Moore. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This is the More Money Show. We talk about finance, we talk about economics, we talk about politics, and we have a good time. And by the way, this is one of those shows that is not canned. It's not a canned advertisement. We provide you fresh information. We have fun discussion. And so I'm so honored for all our affiliates that have joined this show. We just keep multiplying. The More Money Show is hot right now, folks. Very hot. Because you know why? Donald Trump is hot. And I want to start the show by just telling you that what happened in the last 10 days is phenomenal. The fact that we have this new tax bill is so super bullish for America, and I think bullish for the whole world. I think the rest of the world's going to start cutting their tax rates just as we've done here in the United States. I just got back from an international conference. People were asking me from all over the world about what is Trump doing? Why is he doing this and that? And I told the story of Trump, and they were like, we have to do this in our country. And I said, yes, you do. So, and incidentally, I'm not here to cheerlead for Donald Trump. I love the guy. He's been so great to me, but I don't always agree with everything Donald Trump does. I agree with about 80% of it. Some of you I know agree with him 95% of the time. So I think that's wonderful. But he's off to an incredible start. You know, this has been about 6 months now, and we've got a secure border. We've got low inflation. We've got lots of jobs out there. We've got incomes rising at the fastest pace in 20 years. We have lower crime. And people, and by the way, the border is secure, and that's an amazing thing. I think now we've got to think about how we can keep the immigrants we want and get rid of the ones who are criminals and gang members and potential terrorists. But it's a pretty picture for America right now. And throughout the show, you'll be hearing about why it is that this is a great place to invest in, and why we're at the beginning of a boom. And I really believe that. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be a straight trajectory up. There will be good months and bad months. And I always say, you know, that there's a good and a bad with Trump. And when I get up in the morning, I say my prayers, please, God, can we have the good Trump today, not the bad Trump? And you know what? Mostly we are getting the good Trump. And I'm just so pleased about that, and so proud of having an association with this man who cares so much about our country and is doing so many incredible things. And what he is doing in terms of getting rid of these government programs we don't need, work requirements, expansion of school choice, expansion in health savings accounts, the fact that he has basically cut the tax on every small business in America, the fact that the families are going to see avoid a $2,000 tax increase next year thanks to the passage of this bill. It's all great. It is all good. And now, look, I know a lot of you who are conservatives are saying, oh, well, Steve Moore is just glossing over the fact that the deficit and debt are going up. Well, you know, that's been happening for 40 years. And I don't like it. I hate the debt. I hate out of control government spending. You're not going to find anybody on the radio or anybody in Washington who wants to cut government spending more than I do. I wrote a book a number of years ago called Govzilla, and it's still a great book. It has all the sorts of charts about how government spending is out of control. And so I agree with you. I think it's the one thing that worries me the most is that neither party wants to cut government spending. I hate to tell you, because I know probably most of our audience is Republicans, although I respect and so honored to have Democrats and independents who listen to the show as well. Thank you, because you might not agree with me on everything, but I appreciate you listening and getting a different point of view. We need more of that. But I'm not always a rah-rah Republican. And in fact, I'm happy to say that, not happy to say it, but I'm honest enough to say Republicans are part of the problem oftentimes, and they are. But I think we're going to see lower deficits. I think we're going to see higher growth. And I have so much I want to talk to you about today, but let me say this, that what you are hearing from the media about this tax bill is a lie, 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 lie. Every time I open up the newspaper or watch MSNBC, which I have to do, or CNN, or even sometimes CNBC, some of these, even sometimes Fox, they're not always telling you the truth about this bill. The idea that we're throwing people off Medicaid and that they're going to die. I mean, the Democrats are saying we're going to die. We're going to die because of this bill. I love Babylon Bee, which is the kind of group that lampoons liberals, had a very funny thing saying, well, 3 days after the bill passed, millions of people have died. No, nobody's dying. This is about fixing our fiscal situation in Washington and making sure we have a roaring economy. And the idea that the only people that are not going to get Medicaid are the people who are not eligible for Medicaid. It's illegal immigrants. It's people who are criminals, people who have an income that's too high to get Medicaid. I mean, we can't provide free health care to everybody in the world, folks. I'm sorry. I'm a very charitable person. I'm a Christian. I'm a Catholic. But the idea that we have enough money to just provide free food and free health care and free housing and free of this and that for everybody, that is not the road to success. I think you all know that. So that's in the bill. There's so many great things in this bill that I'm going to spend the next hour or so really dwelling on the great things, the fact that we cut taxes for every small business. You can expense your immediately write off your expenses if you're a businessman now. You don't have to, do through depreciation and wait 5 years to write off your expenditures. This is really cool stuff. It's good for America. I'm so proud of the president. I'm so proud of Speaker Johnson, who is one of my favorite speakers of all time. He was thrown into this job unwillingly almost. Nobody else wanted the job. He's done a spectacular job. So Speaker Mike Johnson, I am saluting you. What a fantastic job you did. And John Thune, what a great job he did, the leader of the Senate. It wasn't easy. The Republicans only have a 3-seat majority in the Senate and a 1-seat majority in the House. And just before we take a break, I want to tell you I'm disgusted with the Democrats. I'm not a especially partisan person, but every single Democrat in Congress voted against this bill. I don't understand it. Do they really want to destroy the country? Did they really want a $4 trillion tax increase next year that would have been like the tax equivalent of a nuclear bomb on our economy? What is wrong with these people? Why don't they love America first before they love their party? They are so deranged about Trump, even things that they once were in favor of, they're against them if Trump is in favor of. I don't get it. I don't think it's good for the country. And I'm not here to tell you Republicans are the salvation. I'm just trying to tell you we need new leadership in the Democratic Party. And it ain't the guy who's running for the mayor of New York, who's just a crazy man. And it's not Gavin Newsom. And it's not, as many of you know, I'm from Illinois. Pritzker is the governor there. He's run that state into the ground. Somebody's got to emerge. Someone on the Democratic side has to emerge as a pro-growth, pro-business, pro-person, pro-choice in terms of everything Democrat. Who is it going to be? I don't know who it is, but I hope one emerges. Folks, this is the More Money Show. We will be right back.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
77 WABC invites you to a family fun day and softball showdown on July 20th with net proceeds benefiting Shriners Children's. John Sterling will call the game as the FDNY takes on the NYPD with special guests Dwight Gooden, Art Shamsky, 77 WABC hosts including Sid Rosenberg, Anthony Cumia, Lionel, Dominic Carter, and many more. For more info and to buy tickets, go to ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org. That's ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org.
Hey, it's Paris. You know I love sparkly things, right? Like stars. Duh. And thanks to Hilton and AutoCamp, I just slept under them. Picture me, serving looks by the fire outside my luxurious Airstream, making s'mores with the kids, while a national park is our backdrop. The great outdoors meets Hilton hospitality. That's hot. Explore all the new ways to stay at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
Through the Starbucks College Achievement Plan, full and part-time Starbucks baristas receive 100% upfront college tuition coverage so they can focus on achieving their dreams, not how they'll pay for school. And those dreams might start with a degree in management, biochemistry, or any of the more than 150 offered. At Starbucks, benefits like college tuition coverage are just the start. Learn more at starbucks.com/partners.
More Money Show with Steve Moore
Entertaining and informative.
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show. So one of my longtime friends and a guy who I admire so much in terms of his political insights, and I know you do too because you see him all the time on Fox News, and he is just one of the most incisive guys about what is going on in Washington, what's going on in politics, is Joe Concha. And by the way, I did Joe's show last week, and so I said, only under the condition, Joe, that you would come on my show. So thanks so much for joining.
A live negotiation. I was cornered. What am I going to do? Say no in front of millions?
Yeah, right. I'm like Donald Trump. I'm a tough negotiator.
Wow, this was an easy one
Joe,
to say yes to.
Thanks very much for joining. So I just wanted to add, first of all, I'm going to give my premise, and then I'd like your reaction. I think Trump is just pushing all the right buttons, and I'm not when he does something wrong, I'm willing to say, Mr. President, I don't agree with you on this or that. Sometimes he gets angry at me, but I have to say, this guy is on a super roll. I mean, he can do no wrong.
Well, you just look at the numbers, right, Steve? I mean, you look at border crossings are basically non-existent at this point.
Right.
What's amazing about that is it's not like they passed some legislation like we heard had to happen for that to happen. It just happened because of the president's rhetoric. And then they see things like alligator Alcatraz. If you're thinking about coming to this country, well, you may end up there. You may think twice about actually coming here. So Overall, you look at that number, you look at obviously inflation. Core inflation was 3.3% when Donald Trump took office. It's now down to 2.8%. Gas prices down, consumer confidence way up. I could go on and on. Iran, nuclear facilities decimated. As far as to do no wrong, he's doing a lot of right. That's certainly for sure.
So you know Trump pretty well. I know Trump pretty well. The guy has a spine of steel. And, one of the things I admire about him is that he doesn't really care what people say about him. He's going to do what he thinks is right. And I've been waiting a long time for a president to do that.
Yeah, and the thing is, his first term, if you go back to 2017, the first year was a mess. And the reason why is because, Donald Trump's not from Washington, and he surrounded himself with people that may have been loyal to him during the campaign. Jeff Sessions comes to mind, right? And I could go down the line. Anthony Scaramucci was once the director of communications for the White House.
Right.
Kind of funny to talk about now, lasted about 5 hours. But still, the point is that he has people around him now that he could trust, who are loyal, and therefore he can move forward with confidence without looking over his shoulder every leak that comes out about his administration. So you haven't seen the leaks coming this time around, and he's acting decisively and confidently, and that's why, compared to Joe Biden, I mean, Donald Trump has already taken more questions and spoken to reporters longer than Biden did in an entire 4 years. And that's not an exaggeration.
That's amazing. What a statistic.
Yeah, because he's confident in his argument.
He'll talk to the press all day, and it's amazing too because they're so abusive towards Trump, and yet he handles the press as well as anybody I've ever seen in that regard. The economy, you're right, Joe, is really looking up. I'm personally super bullish, especially after that tax cut passed. I wanted to ask you something about the politics of that, if I may. First of all, I've been in this business a long time. I came to Washington about almost 40 years ago, and Trump has this nasty habit of proving me wrong. And so I was telling people for months, there is no way that they're going to get this tax bill done by July 4th. And he did it.
And I was in the same boat as you. And it wasn't because I didn't have confidence in Trump's ability. It was more Mike Johnson and John Thune had zero margin to work with. I mean, in Johnson's case, you have that perpetual no vote. Thomas Massey, who loves voting with the squad a lot and loves to fundraise off of it and talks about, acting on principle when he offers no solutions in alternatives in between. He tried to actually have Johnson ousted. The fact that Johnson could get that through the House with basically a 1-vote margin and then John Thune with a 3-vote margin and all the different factions that wanted all those different things, you had to compromise, and that's why no one loves the bill 100% completely. But with the numbers that they had, if you wanted the cuts that Elon Musk wants, for example, right, on spending, you lose moderate Republicans. You do that, the bill doesn't pass. The bill doesn't pass, taxes go way up, and spending stays where it is, which is massive. So that's the win there. Now you get the discretionary bills pass as far as cutting, and then Musk maybe won't be as loud as he has been to this point.
Well put. By the way, I'm talking to Joe Concha. You know him from Fox News. He also, by the way, when is your show on WABC, Joe? Is it Sundays?
It is Sundays at 11 a.m. It's the Judge Jeanine Tunnel for Towers Foundation show. And, it's funny because, Jeanine was hired, obviously, by the president to be DA of Washington. So that makes me the only person left at Fox that hasn't been hired by Trump.
Well, you do a great job.
On the air. So he's like, all right, Concha makes some sense. He criticizes me once in a while, but when I talk to him, he's like, you used to be very good, now you're great. I'm like, okay, I graduated from a B to an A. Thank you, Mr. President. So
practice makes perfect, as they say. And so now let's talk, if I may ask you about the Democrats. When I first came to Washington, Joe, and this is a heartbreaking story, actually. I mean, when I came to Washington, I dealt with Democrats all the time. I've dealt with Dick Gephardt and Bill Bradley and Sam Nunn and, sometimes even Ted Kennedy on issues and things like that. Bill Clinton was a moderate Democrat president and did some good things for our country. We had a balanced budget under Bill Clinton. What happened to those people, Joe? How did the far left take over the Democratic Party in such a subversive way?
I have a theory on this, Steve. I think it's social media. I look at the rise of the left, the far left, and the rise of X, social media, TikTok videos, that sort of thing, because they could communicate and do all, do the snark like AOC does. I don't know what Eric Swalwell does as a congressman, but he's on there all day. You think there's a 2-drink minimum because he's just trying to make a joke. Right? It's insane. So I think that's what's helping to dictate the Democratic Party. Look at Jasmine Crockett, for example, right? This is a person who says insane things like...
Now, who are you talking about?
Jasmine Crockett of Texas, Democratic Congresswoman.
Okay.
Yeah, she's nuts. All right. She's on MSNBC and CNN a lot. That's probably why, the name isn't familiar to you, because those networks have more employees and viewers.
I don't watch too much of that.
Yeah, I don't blame you. But the point is that she said, for instance, that Trump's 2 assassins were actually Trump supporters. You're like, no, that's not wrong. That's not right. She called Governor Abbott of Texas Governor Hot Wheels because he's in a wheelchair because, he's paralyzed.
Really
outrageous. And now she is the leading candidate for the Democratic nomination to run against either Ken Paxton or John Cornyn for the Senate in Texas, because she's loud, she's provocative, and that's what gets rewarded by the Democratic Party. If you're a moderate and you're like a John Fetterman who makes sense about a lot of things, you don't get the attention that they do. So I think it's social media driven, to be honest with you.
So I'm listening to, these people that are, it's obviously very early, but already many people are looking towards 2028, and Donald Trump cannot run again, I don't think. So it's so interesting to me, Joe, that 2 of the front runners are the people that are being talked a lot about are Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, and the governor of the state that I am from, which is Illinois. I'm a Chicago boy, J.B. Pritzker. And these 2 have been total disasters for their state. I mean, they have nothing to brag about. So what is J.B. Pritzker going to say? I'm going to make America look like Illinois? Or is Newsom going to say, I'm going to make America look like California? I mean, that's a joke.
Well, I think in Pritzker's case, he'll just say yabba dabba do, because the resemblance to Fred Flintstone is overwhelming. So maybe he rides that home. No, you're right. Illinois is an absolute mess, and I'm a big fan of Chicago. I'm not from there, but I'm a Cubs guy, Bulls guy when Michael Jordan was there, and the Bears, obviously. Yeah, I know it's weird. I'm from New Jersey, but those are my teams. But anyway, the point is that if you just look at their records, like in Gavin Newsom's case, okay, highest homeless rate in the country, highest income tax rate in the country. You have a state that has a budget deficit like we've never seen before. He doesn't know how to handle wildfires in terms of having water in simple places. But he's running on hair gel, and he's running on white teeth. And forget the fact that he was eating at the French Laundry during COVID when he shut everything down. I think, again, it's performance art. And if you could be the best performance artist, that's what gets you the nomination, not common sense things like Bill Clinton did with a balanced budget amendment and the era of big government is over and welfare reform.
So I know you just got a minute or 2 left, because I know you've got to run off and do a TV interview because you're always on TV. So
it's a radio one, so I could go a little longer with it. That's fine.
on the way out. So when you look at, is there room for a moderate Democrat? One of the guys who I actually went to high school with, believe it or not, is the he was. I'm having a senior moment here. He was the Rahm Emanuel. Okay. And I don't know if you've been following this, but Rob has been saying some pretty interesting things about his party. He's saying, hey, we're way out of touch with middle-class America. And I applaud him for saying that. I know that on social media, they're beating him up. But can someone, I don't know if you've been following Rahm Emanuel and some of the things he's been saying, but they make a lot of sense to me. Can someone like that emerge?
No. And I say that definitively because I was old enough to remember 2020. And Michael Bloomberg, who I thought was a very good mayor of New York, I lived there at the time, and he just extended Giuliani's policies right as far as crime, and then obviously ran it like a business. And he had 3 terms, so he had to be successful. And when he ran for the Democratic nomination in 2020, they ate him alive. He could a moderate will not survive the nomination process. You would have to go to the left during that and then come back to the center during the general. And I don't think a moderate will survive. And Rahm Emanuel is just too vanilla and makes too much sense.
Yeah. So you know what my theory is, and we'll kind of end with this, just your quick response to this, that, I lived through the Reagan years. And so Republicans Reagan won 2 landslide elections, as you may recall. And then George H.W. Bush won an election. So Republicans won 3 straight presidential elections, and the Democrats were out in the wilderness. And out comes, a moderate Democrat in Bill Clinton, who sort of saved the Democratic Party. You don't think that can happen? In other words, do they have to lose again before they learn their lesson?
I guess so. Yeah, I think I just don't see how a moderate gets through the noise that, let's say, AOC runs. she'll get all the media attention. No one's going to really look at her record, right? And somebody like Rahm Emanuel, I guess maybe. Clinton also benefited from the fact that Ross Perot was in that race and a recession was happening. So Clinton won with 43% of the vote. So yeah, if you have a fractured electorate and a moderate somehow could get through, I think that person has a chance. But if the Trump economy is taking off the way we think it will, and it's already doing great, like we talked about, and foreign policy, we have peace and prosperity. J.D. Vance is very well lined up as the Republican nominee. That's for sure.
Well, Joe Concha, thanks so much for joining. Love the work that you do on TV and radio. Folks, this is The More Money Show, and we will be right back.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Now, I am so pleased to bring on Bob and Ryan Payne, two good friends, two of the smartest people I know in the financial markets. You see Ryan on all the time on Stuart Barney and with on the Mornings with Maria on Fox Business and so on. These guys are smart. They can tell you how to make more money. That's why I have them on the show. Gentlemen, thanks for joining today.
Great to be here, Steve. It's been too long, my friend.
It has. Okay, so Bob, you're the senior fellow in this relationship. So I want to go with you because you have so much, age goes with wisdom. That's what I've found over the years, Bob. So I like the market a lot, Bob. I'm very pleased with the way things are going, especially compared to 4 months ago when in mid-April, the dot market was down 2,000 points and I was on the ledge ready to jump. So things have really improved a lot. And by the way, I have to say, you guys have been pretty bullish. You've been pretty right. Even when everybody else was running for the exits, you guys were pretty prescient in what was going to happen with the market. Now, is all the good news been priced in yet, Bob, or what do you think?
No, I just think we're at the beginning of a big booming bull market, Steve. We've had, you take this year, we were at all-time record highs in December, and all of a sudden we had the Trump tariff announcements, and the market went into a tizzy, right? So we had a big 19% correction. That's already been wiped out. If you want to wait for a couple of months,
so hold on, Bob, hold on. I want to. So you're saying that the market was down almost 20%?
Yep, it was down at 20%
on
the.
Wow. Wow. And it's made up almost all of that, right?
It's made all of it, and now we're ahead for the year. And it's not just the U.S. market; it's also the global markets. That's where we're making the most money this year. In Europe, Japan, we're up over 20% year to date.
So, Bob, what caused the turnaround?
Well, first of all, the markets don't like to be surprised. So we had what we call a black swan event. When something unexpected happens, the market reacts to uncertainty by hitting the sell button and then trying to figure it out later. Meanwhile, the economy's been resilient. Earnings estimates are going up. Tariffs, just like we said on that recession, Steve. How many years we talked about recession? We kept saying it's a no-show. It's a no-show. It's not going to go up. Well, we're not having any tariff inflation either.
Yeah. Well, the old saying is that economists have predicted 4 of the last 2 recessions, so they keep they're so pessimistic. So, Ryan, what do you think it is? Is it the here? Well, let me tell you my theory, Ryan, and then you're the financial expert. So tell me if you agree or disagree. So as I look at the market over the last 6 months, and I basically agree with Bob that we reached that low point in mid-April when all the talk, as you know, for the first few months of the Trump presidency was tariff. And in my opinion, Ryan, Bob, people don't like tariffs, and investors certainly don't like tariffs. And then when Trump started talking about trade deals and getting some of these deals done, all of a sudden the market improved. And I wonder, so that means if Trump can continue to get trade deals, I kind of agree with Bob. I think that it's a sunny future.
Yeah, I think bottom line is Trump's still talking about tariffs, right?
Yeah, right.
He's talking about trade deals,
he's never,
but he's still talking about tariffs.
Ryan, he's never going to stop talking about tariffs. It's his favorite word.
I think, yeah. Canada had a rude awakening today. Brazil the other day. It just depends on the day. But I think the point is, and I think markets are very good at pricing the future. And the reason the market started rebounding all the way back on April 9th and still going higher, even with Trump talking about tariffs, is the fact that I think we've come to the realization it's a negotiating tactic, right? At the end of the day, I don't know where the tariffs are going to end, right? If I'm China, it wasn't at 100%, right? Maybe it's at 40, 30% today. But I think what we're coming to the conclusion here is Trump creates as much chaos as possible to finally get the deal that he wants. And I think that's what the market's resolved to. There will be tariffs. It probably won't be as crazy as some of these initial numbers are, but it's not enough to derail the economy, and it's not enough to derail the profit cycle. And I think that's what the market's telling you right now, Steve.
I think there's a lot of truth to that. Now, Ryan, what do you make of the tax bill? And I want to ask both of your guys your opinions. I'm over the moon on this. I think it's a great bill. I think it takes a lot of uncertainty out of the market in terms of where we're headed with tax policy because these tax cuts were made permanent. But some of my friends say, oh my gosh, the deficit's going to go through the roof and that kind of thing. What's your take, Ryan, on the tax bill? Is it big and beautiful?
Well, first off, I'm not ready to join Elon Musk's American Party yet. So I do think, I do like the fact that we do have clarity. To your point, we at least we know where we stand, right? We know we're going to extend the tax breaks, which is huge. I think one of the biggest deals is for small businesses is some of the deductions they're able to take on interest that they weren't able to take before. That goes right to the bottom line. We know with real estate, there's some big deductions you can take up front. So I think for small businesses specifically, you think about small cap stocks. If you're an investor right now, you've got a lot of tax advantages you didn't have just a couple days ago. So I think overall, with that clarity, with some of the tax breaks, we know some of the middle class got tax breaks too, Steve, right? Whether it's no taxes on Social Security, on overtime, depending on what income bracket you're in, on tips. All that helps the middle class. All that helps spending. So I think overall, the fact that we have clarity, we have some tax breaks specifically for businesses and consumers. Another reason why you're seeing the market go higher here.
I'm talking to Ryan and Bob Payne from Payne Capital Management. And folks, these guys have been with this show, I think, from the very, very start. Without Bob and Ryan Payne and Payne Capital Management, this show wouldn't exist. So I can't tell you how much we appreciate your sponsorship of the show. Bob, swinging it back over to you, what are the kind of warning signs that people should be nervous about, notwithstanding the fact that I think the three of us tend to be very bullish, but are the things to worry about?
Well, first of all, the market always climbs this gigantic wall of worry, right? So it's, right. When it's always the case, right, Steve? Yeah. So when you get one of those one of those bricks of worry, right? We have inflation. People are worried about inflation right now. The Federal Reserve is worried about inflation, worried about whether or not tariffs are going to cause more inflation. There's geopolitical risk, right? We still have conflict going on in the Middle East. We still have Ukraine and Russia going at it. So you have that type of geopolitical headwind, which could have a big impact on oil. But meanwhile, what we've been seeing is oil's been coming down in price, which is a tax cut for the global economy. And I think that's why you're seeing global inflation come down and global economies are growing.
Well, that's a really important point, and great minds think alike because, the reason we're all supply siders is when you increase the supply and productive capacity of the country, that causes prices to fall. I mean, and that's I think you're right. So you're seeing inflation tame, and what about in Europe and in Asia? Are you seeing the same thing?
Yeah, we're actually seeing inflation come down pretty fast over in Europe, but they're also cutting interest rates in the different economies. And this is where, a lot of the Trump administration just had a phenomenal impact on the global economy because he just said, hey, we're done paying for everybody's defense. So all of a sudden you have Germany and the European Union, they're starting to put expansionary measures in place. They're spending money on their own defense and their own infrastructure, Steve. Who'd have thunk it?
Yeah, it's about time. It is about time. Ryan, just very quickly, tell people how they can get in contact with Payne Capital Management and the services you provide.
Yeah, you can check out our firm at bebullish.com. That's bebullish.com. And it's our last name, Payne, is Payne.
By the way, that's so easy to remember, folks. Bebullish.com. I mean, how can you not remember that? I love it.
It goes right with our belief of the world, right? You should be optimistic, not pessimistic, Steve. And I think that's the point right now too. It's a really good point, is the fact that you've got the whole world is spending on their economy. And I think that's, President Trump's viewpoint is like, he wants everyone to benefit, right? It's not just about, it's U.S. first, but, we don't want conflict. We want commerce everywhere. And I think that's what you're seeing, whether it's, we've given our tech stack to Saudi Arabia, or we're, trying to stop the conflict in the Middle East or settle that. So I think overall, especially as you're building your portfolio right now, you have a great opportunity where, a lot of our clients are baby boomers. They need income. By diversifying properly right now, you can get a lot of cash flow, not just vesting in the AI trade, which everybody loves, but getting some income, and betting on the fact that the whole global economy is going to benefit right now. And that's great for the U.S. and that's great for everybody. And I think that's actually the golden moment that you have right now.
So what countries do you guys like? I mean, I'm generally with you in terms of I think we share an optimism and realism about what's going on with the economy. So are there particular regions or countries that you're bullish on right now? I'll start with you, Bob.
I'm very bullish on the United States of America.
Me too.
First of all, so that's my go-to country right now, Steve. And we do dominate the global economy. But what's happening now is you're starting to see the dollar came down about 10% this year. And when you have that, when you have a weaker currency, it tends to help your investments in other parts of the world, like Europe, like Japan, like the emerging markets like India. And so we're seeing this, significant impact this year, just from the difference in currencies. Now, of course, I just booked a trip to Italy at the worst time, right? So I'm going to be paying through the nose for this trip, but I'm making a lot of money in the U.S. market. So I'm not. I'm gonna cry all the way to the bank right now, Steve.
Well, Bob, I got to tell you, my wife and I just got back from a cruise through Spain and Italy and had a great time. And I hope you have we had great weather and everybody. It's so interesting, Ryan, when I go abroad like that, and I don't travel abroad all that often, but people always come up to me asking about Trump, and there's a fascination with Donald Trump and what's happening here in America. But do you know what? Okay, so we all agree about U.S. Ryan, do you have other countries you think are ready to explode?
I think, anywhere in the emerging markets, if you think about Latin America specifically, they do have rare earth minerals, not as much as China, but that's a place for
what country was that?
You could say Brazil, Argentina, Chile, anywhere that has commodity-based economy. And those markets are up actually 30% this year. But again, just as a diversifier, to Bob's point, when you're thinking about living off your portfolio, you want to hedge against currency. You want dividends, and that's exactly where you can get a lot of dividends, is abroad. So whether it's the emerging markets, whether it's just developed Europe, I mean, Germany's probably the best performing stock market in the world this year, which is hard to believe. So you want that European exposure as well. But I think, the most important thing you can do right now, Stephen, we look at maybe way too many portfolios a month, is we see too many people concentrated with their money in the same place. And that's what we call the AI enablers, right? Whether you're in NVIDIA, you're the Magnificent Seven, you're Microsoft, Amazon, Google, you name it. But really right now, you've got every company benefiting from artificial intelligence and productivity.
I was just going to ask you about that. But we just got a couple minutes left. And so you just went right where I wanted to go. Ryan, which is AI. I just spoke at a big global conference, and everybody was talking, financial conference. Everybody was, coming up to me asking me about AI. I'm a pretty big believer in this. Look at NVIDIA. I mean, I think, gentlemen, we only have a couple minutes left, but if you both, I'm sure, saw the big headline in the Wall Street Journal earlier this week that basically said NVIDIA is now the first $4 trillion company. $4 trillion, by the way, that's a lot.
Yes.
So but it makes me nervous. I'm thinking, my gosh, if their valuation is $4 trillion, I don't know if I want to get into that. But what do you think, Bob?
Well, I think you missed a gigantic move, Steve.
No, by the way, can I just say,
the best performing stock in the world.
Investing. My wife does our investing, and I got to tell you, 5 years ago, she bought NVIDIA, and it's the only good investment I've ever made in my whole life.
So, Bob, what I'm hearing is lunch is on Steve next time.
I think that should be the way it is, Fry. You know?
I didn't tell you about my losers, but
but no, I think every company becomes an AI company, and NVIDIA has been a tremendous stock, and that area of the market's been very, very strong. But you're also seeing, great movement now in mid-sized companies and value companies. So there's, every company's going to benefit from advanced technology. So you're going to see higher productivity, higher profit margins, and as a result, higher earnings and higher dividends.
That's why I have you guys on the show, because I agree with you. I could.
We're here to enable you, Steve. Our job is to enable you.
All right, well, folks, that's Bob and Ryan Payne of Payne Capital Management. They've been with this show from the very start. I think they're two of the best in the business. One more time before we sign off, how do people get in touch with you guys?
Absolutely. Just go to bebullish.com. Steve, that's bebullish.com, www.bebullish.com.
All right, guys, have a great weekend, folks. That's Bob and Ryan Payne. This is The More Money Show, and we'll be right back.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show. I am Steve Moore, economist, and so glad that people are joining the show. Thanks so much for the success of this show. We are multiplying the number of stations we're in every single week, and it's really gratifying, and I really appreciate so many people tuning in on Saturday afternoons and sometimes on Sundays as well to listen to the show. So just a few minutes before we take our top of the hour break, I wanted to mention that if you're looking at one of the claims that many of my liberal friends make is that the middle class is getting poorer and it's shrinking, and that the last 30 years has been a terrible time for the middle class. Now, I know most of you listening to the show are probably middle class. Maybe you're upper middle class. We have some rich people listen to the show, but I think most of you are somewhere in the middle between the bottom 20% and the top 20%. You're somewhere in that category. And so is the middle class shrinking? Because this is the claim that capitalism isn't working because the middle class is going away. And it's just all rich people and all poor people. Well, not really. And I have the statistics to show this because it's important. And I want you guys to pay attention to this. So if you look, it is true that there are not as many people in the middle class brackets as there used to be. That is true. So it used to be about 40% were in the middle class, but now it's closer to about 30%. So does that mean they're going away? Well, does it mean they're getting poorer? No, it does not. In fact, if you look at the people who are classified as poor, and I'm going to go back to around 1970. So the last 50 years, what has happened? Well, these are the official just released Census Bureau data. This is the best data we have. Back in 1970, 33% or 1 out of every 3 Americans was essentially poor. That's a pretty high rate of poverty in the United States. They weren't necessarily in poverty, but they were poor. They did not have a middle class income. So today, here we are 50 years later, and only about 20% are poor, only about 1 in 5. And by the way, that's just the money income. It doesn't include the fact that people have cell phones and all these other air conditioning and things that didn't even exist 50 years ago. So think about that. 1/3 of Americans were poor in 1970, 20% are poor in the year 2000. These are 2003 data. We don't have the 2004 data yet. So this trend has been for growth and for prosperity for people to rise up the income ladder. So then, this is pretty amazing. The people who make 6 figures, and these are adjusted for inflation, folks. So these are the numbers adjusted for the inflation over this time period. It used to be that only 13% of Americans were labeled high income. Only 13%. You know what that number is today? 41%. 41%. So you see what's happening here is people are moving up the income ladder. This is the American dream, that one generation will be wealthier than and richer than the generation that preceded them. That doesn't always happen, but it has happened in the last two generations. And so this is a land of opportunity. It is not true that we need socialism because the middle class is shrinking. Now, the middle class is shrinking in Europe, but that's because Europeans are getting poorer. The middle class is shrinking in the United States because, for the most part, Americans are getting richer. And incidentally, the people who are stuck in poverty tend to be people who've been put on inside the trap of the welfare system. And if you don't work and you don't have a job, then sorry, you can't get out of being poor. I mean, the welfare isn't going to make you rich, right? Although some people want it to. Thank God that's not the case, or nobody would be working today. And so these are good numbers. These are really good numbers. And it started under Reagan, it expanded under Clinton, and it expanded again under Donald Trump. When you have good presidents who put in place good policies, you make for a more affluent a society with more workers, more people who have the kinds of things that they want, and they feel better about themselves and their families. So why is it that the left is always portraying America as a nation in decline? I just don't get it. We are not declining, folks. We are rising the income ladder, but you got to get a job. You got to stop doing, the three things that stop people from climbing the ladder is doing drugs, dropping out of school early, having a baby before you're the age of 20. And the other one is if you don't work. If you don't work, you can't rise up the economic ladder. So it's not complicated how you get ahead in America. And the good news, people are getting ahead in America, and that's going to continue because of Trump's policies. Thank you so much, folks. We'll take a quick break here, and we will be right back.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Brace the rudders! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started today at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
What if Black Friday deals were available in the summer? Don't miss week-long doorbusters at Best Buy during Black Friday in July. Learn more at bestbuy.com. Best Buy. Imagine that.
This episode is brought to you by Polestar. There's only one true way to experience the all-electric luxury SUV Polestar 3, and that's to take a test drive. It can go from 0 to 60 in as little as 4.8 seconds with the dynamic handling of a sports car. But to truly understand how it commands the road, you need to be behind the wheel. Up to 350 miles of range, the 3D surround sound system by Bowers & Wilkins. It's all something you have to experience to believe. So book your test drive for Polestar 3 today at polestar.com.
This message is sponsored by Greenlight. With school out, summer is the perfect time to teach our kids real-world money skills they'll use forever. Greenlight is a debit card and the #1 family finance and safety app used by millions of families, helping kids learn how to save, invest, and spend wisely. Parents can send their kids money and track their spending and saving, while kids build money confidence and skills in fun ways. Start your risk-free Greenlight trial today at greenlight.com/Spotify. That's greenlight.com/Spotify.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show. Thanks so much for joining. I hope everyone is having a wonderful Saturday. Honor to be in front of this microphone on so many affiliated stations throughout the country. Of course, our flagship is WABC in New York, but we're everywhere. And thanks to John Catsimatidis, who is the owner and operator of this radio station, does an amazing job. But a lot to talk about this afternoon. Thanks again for joining. We love to talk about economics. We love to talk about politics, finance. We like to make it fun. Who else makes economics fun? But we do a pretty good job of that. So thank you. And if you're a new listener, thank you for joining. I know we have many new affiliates. We're picking up every week. It's just amazing how hot our show is. I'm almost as hot as the president. I'm just joking. But talk about hot, by the way. This president is amazing. The economy is absolutely booming right now. It's a beautiful picture to see. We got low inflation, we got low unemployment, we got a lot of jobs out there. We've got a secure border. You just go through all of the litany of things that are working, and I'm proud. I'm proud to say that I have been affiliated with Donald Trump and have helped advise him. Not that he needs my advice, but boy, he is just doing amazing things. And one of the things I wanted to start with, if I may, is the trade deals. Now, I'm a free trade guy. I don't like tariffs, but I've got to say that the latest news that we're hearing, and this changes all the time, so it may change in the days to come. But for now, the story out of Europe is that the EU is working to avoid a tariff rate as high as 50%. That's Trump's threat. And so they're saying they want a 10% tariff. So a reciprocal 10% tariff. That's great news. That would be fantastic. It would be Europe would be lowering their tariff on our goods and services, our dairy products, our technology products, our agricultural products, our manufactured products, our cars, and we would be able to import stuff from them. And that's a beautiful picture. And so everybody said, "Oh, Trump is destroying trade and causing all sorts of supply chain disruptions." No, with the 10% tariff, you have very smooth trade relations, and if he can pull that off, that would be what I call the trade deal of the century. And I think he may well do it. And he's threatening these European countries who've been cheating and ripping us off for years that if they don't do it, he's going to hit them with a 40 or 50% tariff. And guess what? Isn't it amazing? They're coming to the table and they're negotiating a better deal. So I'm going to keep my eye on that. You should too, because if you're an investor, if they get that deal done, you're going to see such an incredible acceleration in the valuation of companies because everybody on Wall Street wants to see trade deals. So the point here, folks, is that if Trump can pull off these amazing trade deals, we're going to have freer and fairer trade. We're going to have lower tariffs. We're going to have an economy that improves in the United States and all over the world. He's going to bring peace and prosperity if it happens. Like that's a big if, I know, and I worry that Trump sometimes when things go as well, he calls for even higher tariffs, and I don't like to see that, but I do like to see when we get these deals done. The big one, of course, is China, and I got to tell you, folks, I do not trust China. I know Trump is saying, "Oh, I'm getting a deal with Beijing." But I'm very nervous about that because I don't think that the communists in China can be trusted. They're like the old Soviet Union. Remember, trust but verify. Reagan used to go over there and say, "Look, you can't trust people like Brezhnev and these Soviet leaders who were so corrupt and so dishonest." So that's the way the leaders are in China as well. I'd love to see a deal with them, but we got to make sure that they are living up to the deal. I am very, very, very nervous about where this is all headed with respect to China. So here's my strategy. Let's get a deal done with the Europeans. Let's get a deal with Canada, Mexico, our two biggest trading partners. Let's get a deal done with Japan and Korea, and those look like they're coming along nicely. And then let's try to, isolate China. And they are the bad actor of the world. They are the dangerous country. They're the ones who are building up their military and involved in very predatory trade practices. So let's get a deal with all our friends and sort of gang up on China. That's my approach, and I think that's exactly where Trump is going with this. And if so, I am all for it. Now, let me talk a little bit about some of these other things that are going on. You're hearing lie about the Trump tax cut. It is a fantastic bill. I had a column this week on FoxNews.com about all of the virtues of this bill and what I call the hidden gems. They're everything from school choice to expanding medical savings accounts to getting rid of the electric vehicle mandate. Remember the mandate that required you to buy a car that was electric even if you didn't want one? And by the way, my wife and I have a hybrid. We love it. We use the battery sometimes and then we use the gas sometimes. But no, the left would take that away from us. No, it has to be total battery. And then, when it gets cold, the car doesn't start because the battery isn't working, or you get stranded out in the mountains because your battery runs out of juice. That's something Americans don't want. And I'm not against electric vehicles. I think they're cool. I think I like driving them, but I think everybody in America should be able to get whatever car they want. And then we did some amazing things on work requirements. And I think work requirements are absolutely imperative. If you're going to have a welfare state, you can't have people sitting at home watching TV and playing computer games. And I know people are doing this, and they're collecting free food, free healthcare, free cash checks, unemployment insurance. Come on, that cannot exist. There are jobs out there. We have 8 million jobs opening in this country right now. 8 million. If somebody is able-bodied and they want to get a job, you can find a job in 3 days. Now, it might not be exactly the job you want, but get in the job market, and then you can look for something else. But the idea that we're going to pay you to sit on your duff, no, those days are over, thanks to Donald J. Trump. And I think if the polls show 80% of Americans are in favor of people having to work for their welfare benefits. So these are the kinds of things that I think are important for people to understand. You're not going to hear this on the mainstream media. Here's another thing you're not going to hear on the mainstream media. Look, what happened in Texas with those floods was an absolute horror. And it's something that keeps me up at night to think about what those families and those children went through when those huge floods came through that town in Texas. Horrible, horrible. And by the way, just my prayers and thoughts go out to those families. But I want to tell you something, because this is something the media isn't telling you. A lot of them have said, by the way, this is because of climate change. There have been floods, there have been hurricanes, there have been tornadoes, there have been earthquakes from time immemorial, and yet now they're blaming these things on climate change, which I think is kind of shameless. But I think this is something that everybody should know. The number of people who die as a percentage of our population from things like hurricanes, tornadoes, landslides, floods, droughts, all of these acts of nature. And, Mother Nature can be pretty vicious sometimes, no question about it. The percentage of people who die from these kinds of acts of nature have fallen by almost 80%, and in some cases over 90% in the last century. So, in other words, not more people, but fewer people are dying from accidents due to weather or due to Mother Nature. Why don't they ever tell us that? Why don't they tell us the truth about what's really happening? And incidentally, one of the reasons we're so saddened by what happened in Texas is that it is so rare. It's rare to see these kinds of things happen today, and we want to make sure they don't happen again. And we have the capacity. I think there were some issues with the alarm systems there and the sirens that didn't go off, and I don't know all the truth about that, but I have to tell you that it is something that we have the capacity to make sure this never happens again. And not never happens again, but happens very, very rarely. Another topic that I'd like to bring up, because this is kind of potpourri for me, and these are things that have been on my mind for a long time. The death tax. And this is something I bring up a lot because I think it is such an outrageous tax. And right now, if you die, if you do all the right things, you build a business or a farm or a ranch, and you put all your sweat equity into that business or the ranch or the farm, month after month after month, year after year after year, decade after decade after decade. And I think of people like my father who built a business from scratch, did very well for himself. He was working 50, 60 hours a week. I didn't see a lot of my dad when I was younger because he was always working, building that business. Employed a lot of people. We weren't rich, but we did fine. We didn't want, that's for sure. We had I got a great childhood. I had a great mom and dad, and I'm so lucky for that. But we weren't rich. We watched, as my mom said, watch your P's and Q's, and we did that. And so then, so by the end of his life, my dad had built up this very successful business. I don't know the exact amount it was worth. Let's say it's $10, $20 million, $30 million. It wasn't, Microsoft, and it wasn't NVIDIA, but it was a successful company. And then when he dies, all of a sudden we find out Oh, by the way, the government's going to take half of that away. Half of that away. Well, you include the state tax and the estate tax and the federal tax, it was almost 50%. How is that fair? My dad paid his taxes his whole life. He paid property taxes, he paid gas taxes, he paid sales taxes, he paid income taxes, he paid payroll taxes, all this stuff. Tax, 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 tax. Then he dies, and the government takes half of everything he saved over his life away from him. And by the way, I never wanted my dad's money. I wanted to be independent, and but I don't want the government taking that money. He should be able to do with that money for whatever he wants, whether it's giving his money to the grandkids or giving it to a charity or giving it to other people who had an impact on his life. That's the American dream, isn't it? And so the death tax is a tax on the American dream. Now, to his credit, Donald Trump increased the amount you can deduct from the tax. In other words, the amount you can pass on without paying a tax, but it's still a 40% tax and it's still very high. And I think it has negative economic effects, because why would you continue to go on building a business and later in your life, the government's going to take half of it away from you? After you pay all your other taxes, folks, after you pay your payroll taxes, income taxes, sales taxes, property taxes, this tax, business taxes, etc. This is un-American. By the way, I think most of you probably know that the death tax was something that was originally invented by, you ready for this? I think most of you probably know this because I've mentioned it before. Karl Marx. Karl Marx. This was in Das Kapital. How do you destroy capitalism? You take away the fruits of capitalism from people, and they won't start businesses, and they won't hire people. So let's get rid of the death tax. By the way, it doesn't raise any money. It's 1% of our federal revenues. We wouldn't even know if it was gone, but it would be a much fairer country. I think we'd have more growth. I think people would work longer, continue to build up their business if they knew the government wasn't going to take it away from them when they die. Death and funerals are sad enough without the government and the IRS coming in and raiding half of the money that people earn. I feel so strongly about this, and I'm tired of people. Oh, well, this is just helping society. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. It's an unfair tax, and these people paid billions and billions of tax already, and then they have to pay another layer of tax. And by the way, a lot of countries have eliminated their death tax. Sweden's eliminated their death tax. Russia got rid of their death tax. We're like one of the few taxes with a very high death tax, and we're supposed to be the land of the free that was supposed to be a low tax country, and that tax has to go. And I'm part of the American Family Business Alliance to get rid of that tax. And this idea that, we should just give the money to the government and the politicians, I strongly disagree with that. I also believe that we should, capital gains tax, when you buy a stock or a home or a ranch or a business, you shouldn't have to pay a tax on the inflated gains from inflation. We just lived through 30% inflation under Biden. Now you have to pay a tax that you didn't even earn the money. It was just the price of everything went up, and you have to pay a tax on that. I think that's unfair too. There is so much unfair in our tax system. That's why I am a big believer in the flat tax. Tax everything once at 18, 19, 20%. I know my friend Steve Forbes gets mad at me when I say 20%. He wants 17%. I'll live with that, Steve. I love 17%. But do it, and I think the American people will see a flourishing. Can you imagine if the United States had, say, an 18 or 19% tax and the rest of the world's at 40 or 50%? I mean, nobody could compete with us. We'd blow away the rest of the world, which we're doing anyway because of Donald Trump and his tax bill and his trade deals, et cetera. So I'm bullish, folks. I got to tell you, I am very, very bullish on America right now. I feel like I did in the early Reagan years. Great things are to come. It is morning in America. Thank you, Donald Trump. And we'll be right back. This is the More Money Show.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This is the More Money Show, and my one of my good friends and somebody I admire greatly has been nominated by Donald Trump to be the head of the Organization of American States, which is a really important economic and foreign policy position in terms of dealing with basically North America, and that is Lee Rizzuto. He is also a great businessman, a great supporter of Donald Trump. And Lee, when are you going to get confirmed for that? You've been waiting a long time. It's ridiculous how long this is taking. I have about 20 friends like you who are ripping, raring, ready to go, and they can't get vote in the Senate.
So I had my, first of all, thank you for having me on, Steve, and greetings to your audience. I had my Senate hearing. I got voted out of the hearing, and now we're just waiting, as everyone else. I believe there's over 150 individuals waiting for the floor vote from the Senate.
It's ridiculous. I mean, Lee, we are 6 months or so into the Trump presidency. How can he run a government if he can't get his people in? I mean, there's so many people like you that have been appointed to very important positions for our economy, for our national security, for our foreign policy, for our energy policy. And I don't know, it just makes me quite angry that the Senate is sitting on its hands. You've been approved by the committee, right? Just like most of my friends have been, and the Senate is doing nothing.
So, Steve, I'm not familiar with all of the rules. However, there are rules in place, and it includes both sides, and that process perhaps is designed to slow things down somewhat.
Yeah.
And ultimately, we need both sides to coalesce and put politics aside and say, hey, these are good people that are here to help the country and fix the country.
That's right.
And let's be smart and put them in place. There's a lot of talent out there. I'm not just speaking on my own behalf, but there's a great many individuals that could do quite a bit for the government.
I know.
Of party.
I couldn't agree more. And, I've even said, like, even when, the Democrats win and they get their people, and I'm like, let's confirm them. I mean, the people voted. They want this president. They want this president's people in, unless there's some, reason why these people shouldn't be confirmed. And that's the case in some cases, but not most. And so anyway, it just makes me angry. But let's talk about what you will do. Tell us about your responsibilities and tell us what your objectives are.
Well, Steve, the Organization of American States is actually the oldest organization in American history. It actually predates the UN. It goes back to 1889 when it was first formed. And the organization itself, the purpose of it was the democracy and the unification of the Western Hemisphere. So perhaps today, now more than ever before in its entire history, is that, of tremendous importance, to the entire Western Hemisphere, particularly to the United States.
And how many countries will you be intercoursing with? So basically, it's probably over 30, right?
Yes, so there's 34 countries. It's Canada, U.S., Mexico, Central America, South America, and the Caribbean.
Wow.
But in addition, it is so important that in addition to the 34 member countries, there's 70 observant countries, everyone from China, Russia, most of Western Europe, all around the world. There's 70 countries that have permanent observers assigned to Organization of American States for the purpose of ultimately improving their relations and doing more with those countries.
So, Lee, I've always been a big fan of the Monroe Doctrine. And for those who don't know that from their history books, that's basically that we want some of these, Asian countries and European countries to stay out of our backyard. And it's basically that we need to be unified in the Americas as two continents against the influences of some of these other nations oceans away. I mean, what are your thoughts about that?
Absolutely, Steve. This is our backyard. These are our neighbors. We should view it as family for the most part. And we need to put all our efforts in to further developing the relations in the Western Hemisphere. and the importance of an organization such as this. Quite frankly, we spend probably 1/100th the investment. I don't call it just an expense. I call it an investment of what we pay for our contribution and organization of American States compared to the UN. It's completely,
Right.
incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, and we need that. I would argue, and I think you would too, that the Organization of American States is a lot more important than the United Nations, which never accomplishes anything. So you will be in soon. What are some of the things that will you be working on trade issues, Lee?
So, Steve, I think a topic that's very sensitive, particularly to our political leaders in the U.S. and around the globe, is the amount of money China goes around the world with, with an unlimited checkbook, putting up bridges here and ports here, and basically buying their way into the countries. And how do you compete with, someone that has an unlimited checkbook? And I've given this a lot of thought, and my belief is how the United States can win is by bringing jobs and trade to these countries. So ultimately, we cannot produce everything that we need in this country product-wise. Of course, there should be a strategic focus on the items that we must produce in the United States. But the what we need goes far beyond what we have the ability to produce just in raw manpower besides anything else. So if we could bring trade and manufacturing to these other countries within the Western Hemisphere, ultimately you're bringing them jobs, you're giving people livelihoods, and you become more important than the guy with the checkbook.
Well, also, I mean, that's a great point, but also, since our number one adversary in the world today really is China, if we have a great relationship with our friends in Central American countries and the South American countries and the Caribbean. I've always wanted the United States and Mexico and Canada and others to be, the dominant continent of the world. We can be with respect to finances, with respect to energy, with respect to resources. And so I would love to see that. I wonder what you and the president think.
Absolutely. That should be our goal and our focus, and I'll certainly make it mine. I believe that our relationship will grow exponentially through the focus that I want to give at Organization of American States, together with expanding the trade potential that we have. We could become tremendously important to each other.
And so the president, I'm sure, agrees with you, or he wouldn't have appointed. By the way, I have to say, Lee, I'm just so impressed with the job this president is doing in his first, 5 or 6 months in office with the tax bill and with trade deals and other things. I mean, it's a remarkable thing to see how, and you've known the president for a long time. You live there in Palm Beach, so you see the president all the time at Mar-a-Lago. But I have to say, and I know he greatly admires you. Or, by the way, I'm talking to Lee Rizzuto, who is he's been appointed to be the head of the Organization of American States by Donald Trump. But I'm just amazed, constantly amazed by the victories of this president.
Steve, two things. Number one, he had tremendous successes during his prior term in Trump 45. Yes. However, 99% were unreported. That the media did their best, to put a negative spin on every accomplishment he had, starting with record unemployment in all ethnicities and measurements.
Yes. Yes, Hispanics and blacks did best.
So he had tremendous success during Trump 45. And now even more so because you have the cylinders all firing in synchronization,
Right.
that you have a team that is working together with a common goal, and that goal is the success of America and for the benefit of the American people.
So one question on the way out, I'm talking to the great Lee Rizzuto, who will be the new head of the Organization of America's. Are you what do they call? What do I call you, Mr. Ambassador? What is your title?
Yes, Ambassador. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Ambassador, soon to be. So my question on the way out, and I've only got about 3 minutes left, Lee, but one of the things that caught my attention was your analysis of the trade situation with many of these countries, and you made a really important point, and I want to bring this, if you haven't already, to the attention of the president, that if you look at it on a per capita basis, the inflows and the outflows, it sort of tells a different story than the trade deficit numbers.
So, Steve, let me preface with the fact that I strongly believe in, the president's reciprocal tariff policy.
Right.
And, we need to treat each other globally fairly and all be on the same playing field. But while doing so, I think it's very important to look at the population country by country, because certainly if Mexico has, just use round numbers, a little over 100 million people, and we have 330 million people, well, 100 million cannot buy to the level of 330. So there needs to be some balance and perhaps formula established on one country versus another country, what their potential is. But the bottom line minimum should be that the tariff rate really needs to be reciprocal and equal on both sides, regardless how many people are in one country or another.
So what does that story tell you? That we have pretty much reciprocal trade, right?
So we have quite often, actually, many of these countries on a per capita basis is buying more from the U.S. than we are buying from them.
I mean, by on a per person basis,
yeah,
right? Right.
Correct.
Right.
However, to be fair to America and every taxpayer in America, when we want to sell to those countries, their rate of a tariff needs to be no greater than our rate. So it's just unfair that if you're going to ship a car to Europe or Asia or anywhere in the world, and we're 5% and they're 50%, well, that's just totally obscene and unfair. So the rates need to be equal. And certainly then, we could, give credit, for the countries that have a smaller population, but per capita is buying more on a per capita basis, then, perhaps there's some type of way of acknowledging that and giving credit for that.
Well, it's a really great point, and you and I are going to work on that issue together, because I think it really is a different framework for looking at trade. I mean, obviously, a small country like Costa Rica isn't going to run a trade surplus with the United States because we're so much bigger than they are. Well, I hope, Lee Rizzuto, that you'll come back on the show once you're confirmed, and we can talk more about this. And congratulations on your appointment. I know you'll do an amazing job. That's Lee Rizzuto, folks, the appointee by Donald Trump to run the Organization of American States, which is like 35 countries, an incredibly important position. Thanks for your service to our country. Folks, this is The More Money Show, and we will be right back.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
My cat Freddie loves to be brushed and cuddled. But stirring up his cat allergens meant sneezing and itchy eyes. Then I found Purina One Live Clear. It's cat food that reduced the major allergen and my suffering in as little as 21 days. Now, we feel closer than ever. If you have issues with cat allergens, you really need to try Purina One Live Clear.
Try new Purina One Live Clear today. Purina One, a difference from day one.
Today's top story, the flavor merger of the century between the Peanut Butter Group and Chocolatey Corp. Joining me is a PBC executive.
Thanks for having me, Barry.
Now, how did you know the merger and the byproduct of it, Jif peanut butter and chocolate flavored spread, would be a success?
You know, it was a gut feeling, a rumbling, if you will. Besides, they're two titans of taste.
Very true. Goes great with pretzels.
And pancakes.
Apples too, I bet. Try Jif PBC today.
Hey, this is Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast, here to help you make the most of your summer with Michelob Ultra, a superior light beer worth playing for. Play for it with the guys when you're competing to see who can sink more birdies on the golf course, because winning tastes even better with Ultra on the line. Play for Ultra. Fill your fridge with Michelob Ultra this summer. Enjoy responsibly. Copyright 2025 Anheuser-Busch Michelob Ultra Light Beer, St. Louis, Missouri.
This episode is brought to you by Starbucks. Smooth, bright, deliciously crafted. Introducing Starbucks Sansera Blend, their smoothest, brightest coffee yet. It's a new kind of light roast, one that's packed with so much flavor, it shines no matter how you brew it. So go ahead and try it hot, iced, black, or with a splash of creamer. Visit athome.starbucks.com/Sansera-blend-coffee to bring Starbucks Sansera Blend home.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show. Thanks so much for joining. I hope you're having a wonderful weekend. Now I want to bring back a regular on the show, Phil Kerpen. Phil works with me at Unleash Prosperity. And by the way, he's one of the editors of the Unleash Prosperity Hotline. So I hope everyone is getting that. It costs $1,000. No, it's absolutely free. It's free. It costs you nothing, folks. So all you have to do is sign up for it. And we will send it to you 5 mornings a week. It is go to unleashprosperity.com and sign up. And I think you'll very much appreciate the information. And Phil is one of the people who really puts that together. So Phil, and also you're with American Commitment. Tell us about American Commitment.
Yeah, great to be with you, Steve. American Commitment is a national free market advocacy group. We work really on all the fiscal, economic, and regulatory issues, and we try to find the fights where a little bit more citizen education and engagement might make the difference and tip the outcome in a more free market direction. All our stuff is on AmericanCommitment.org.
So let's start with that subject, because one of the things you work on is pharmaceutical products and the how we get new drugs in the market. And if people get angry, as you know, I get angry about the price of pharmaceutical drugs, and yet we want innovation. We want the new drugs. We want to solve all the problems with MS and the problems with cancer and heart disease and stroke and Alzheimer's and so on. What has worried me, and Republicans and Democrats are both guilty of this, they want to sort of take away the profits of the drug companies. And if they do that, it worries me that we're not going to see the introduction of the new drugs that could prevent some of these horrible, crippling diseases.
Yeah, it's a really good point. It's a really important thing to worry about. We just had the adoption for the first time of price controls in the United States in the Medicare prescription drug purchasing in the Inflation Reduction Act. And unlike green credits, a lot of the other bad things in that bill, that was not revisited. We could not get Congress to revisit that, even with Republicans in control now, because Republicans basically said, well, we don't want to be accused of raising drug prices. So we're going to leave those price controls in place. We're not going to touch that. And, when those price controls were passed, dozens of cancer drug trials were canceled, were terminated, were ended, because the economics of this business are such that for every one drug that's developed that makes it, you investigate a lot of drugs that don't make it, that fail in their trials, that don't work out. And so the average cost of bringing a new drug to market, when you average in all the ones that don't make it, is literally in the billions of dollars.
Right.
Now, you've got 20-year patent life. Let's say you spend the first 8 years of that developing it and getting it approved. It gives you 10 to 12 years, basically, to make back your $1 to $2 billion and a reasonable return on capital. And so that's the reason that drugs are so expensive. You can't just say, we're going to clamp down on prices just by having government arbitrarily lower prices without getting many, many fewer drugs as a consequence of that. Now, we do have generic entry when the patents expire, and then they get very cheap. So that's the trade-off, is they're very expensive for a while, and then they're very cheap.
Yeah, so this is a really important point. So how long is the normal patent for a new drug?
Well, the patent life is 20 years, but
20.
the patent starts from the first time you discover the compound and you register the patent, and it usually takes almost half the patent life before you actually bring it to market. And so the effective exclusive period where you're actually selling the drug is only about half the patent life, maybe a little more. It's usually something like 10 or 12 years.
So one of the things that Milton Friedman used to tell me, and I was honored enough to have known Milton Friedman, the greatest economist of the last 100 years, but he used to say that, the FDA, that's the Food and Drug Administration, which regulates these introductions of these new drugs. He said, that is an industry, he used to say, that kills people. I said, what are you talking about? FDA doesn't kill people. It makes sure that we have safe drugs. And he said, look, every time the FDA says, hey, we just introduced a new drug that saves 100,000 lives a year, he said, well, if they let it be introduced 2 years earlier, we would have saved 100,000 lives. And so his point was that when you delay the introduction of new drugs, and obviously we want to make sure that drugs are safe, but it seems to me, Phil, I think that the FDA is a very corrupt institution. I think it is taking way too long for these drugs to come to market. I know of cases where a drug that was very promising, the company just ran out of money because it was taking so long to get through the FDA process. And so I just feel that they are very complicit in this. And by the way, if you can bring the drugs faster to market, they're going to be cheaper.
Yeah, they're going to be cheaper, and we're going to get more of them, frankly. Yes. And I agree with you. I think it's a huge problem, and it's become a situation where you've got essentially a handful of very large companies that specialize in getting things through the FDA, more so even than they specialize in developing new drugs. And so what happens is a lot of times a great new drug is developed, but the company that develops it feels they need to partner with one of the major pharma companies, or else they just have no chance of getting through the FDA gauntlet. And The incredible thing is the FDA will not approve a drug for sale until it's proven both safe and effective. And it has to be proven effective for something, for anything. And then doctors very frequently will write the prescription for totally unrelated things for which it was never approved as effective, but that they've discovered that it happens to be effective for. And so you've got this very expensive and burdensome, effectiveness testing requirement. And then once it's actually on the market, a lot of drugs end up being used for totally different things anyway. And so I've always liked this idea of just scaling the FDA back to safety testing and letting the market figure out what's effective or not. Because frankly, sometimes FDA says something's effective and doctors disagree and they never write the prescriptions and insurance companies don't cover it. And we just saw that with a very expensive biotech drug for Alzheimer's called Aduhelm that was very controversial. The FDA did approve it, but no one's using it. No one pays for it because it doesn't work very well. And then you could sort of scratch your head and say, well, why don't they just approve a whole bunch of things and we'll see which ones actually work based on which ones the doctors are using and the insurance companies are covering?
Why not give, especially if you have a crippling disease like MS or something like that, why wouldn't we allow people to take, maybe it will work, maybe it won't. We don't know for sure, but what's the harm in letting people try these drugs? I'm on the investor in a company that has an early Alzheimer's drug. They think it's effective. They don't have the concrete proof, but so far in some of the trials, it looks promising. Well, why not let people, if they want to, try that drug?
Yeah, I mean, I think we absolutely should do that, especially because, as I mentioned, they've approved some Alzheimer's drugs that are very expensive and don't work very well.
Right,
and then you've got sort of, it's like it can't be worse. So, yeah, I mean, I would like to see them really lower those barriers. And, the whole thing should be, these days, you can make all the data public and people can figure out, doctors and patients can figure out what makes sense for them from a risk-benefit standpoint if they want to try something or not. So, I mean, I think transparency is much more effective than high regulatory barriers. And I will say, I give the current FDA, the Commissioner of Food and Drugs, Marty Makary, I give him credit because he has announced this new program where he's going to have vouchers that can be used for drugs that are deemed a national priority to get approved much, much faster in a matter of a couple of months instead of the usual multi-year process. So that's great, but I don't love the idea of only certain drugs getting, quick regulatory review based on, which ones he thinks are important. He may well pick well, but I mean, I think we should have a quick process for all of them. He's not infallible. No bureaucrat is.
I'm talking to Phil Kerpen, who works with me at Unleash Prosperity. He's also the president of American Commitment. And by the way, the reason we've been talking about drug prices and how to bring new drugs to market is because he and I are working on a big project to try to solve this problem, because it's a huge problem. And one last thing before I ask you about the healthcare bill, the big beautiful bill, is so just because I think a lot of people don't understand the process. So you mentioned the fact that after 10 years, the patent is basically up, and then anybody can produce the drug, and then the price falls dramatically, right?
Yeah, we've done a pretty good job for most classes of drugs of getting pretty rapid generic entry, and this is one of the great successes we have in this country. Is most of the time, most of the drugs you need, you go to the pharmacy and it's $10 or $20 or whatever it is. When people talk about these outrageous prices, they're talking about those new innovative brand drugs. Once these patents end, we tend to very quickly get generic entry with very low prices. We've done a good job of approving generics, and it's very competitive.
Right. And my point is that then forever, from now until the time immemorial, you get these drugs at a very, very low cost. So in other words, it's the first 10 years they're expensive, and then from then on in, you've got a drug that is really cheap and affordable to everybody. So I don't think people fully appreciate that aspect of this. Before we go, we just got about a minute and a half, 2 minutes left, Phil. Are people dying in the streets? I mean, my gosh, they passed this terrible tax bill, and I keep seeing on MSNBC that people are going to die and people are going to lose their Medicaid. And I don't know, are you seeing people dying in your neighborhood?
I'm not. And, the people who are going to lose, Steve, the people who are going to lose their Medicaid are, a lot of people who are currently ineligible but have not been checked. We've got millions of those because Biden ended eligibility checking. They are illegal immigrants who were never supposed to be on it, but a number of states figured out ways to do it anyway. And they are able-bodied working-age people who refuse to work or be in job training or even volunteering qualifies under this bill for 20 hours a week. So, if you can't meet that requirement or refuse to meet that requirement, I don't think you're especially sympathetic. And that's why, the Democrats and the media who are going crazy about this, they don't really have examples of actual people whose benefits are in doubt because the people involved are not sympathetic, right? So when they say, oh, my God, they're going to hurt the elderly people in nursing homes and children and pregnant women, you say, no. Actually, none of those people are subject to the reforms in this bill. So I think that it's actually going to work very well, I think. And by the way, the numbers, Medicaid spending still grows under this bill. It's going to grow about 3% a year for the next decade now. It went up about 50% in the last 5 years. And New York in particular and California have just been ripping the rest of us off. New York's federal Medicaid spending went up 21% last year in 1 year. So, some of these places are not going to be able to just, go vertical on their draws from federal Medicaid, but it is going to continue to grow, but if we can prevent these reforms from being undone, then after 10 years, we're going to be where we would have been if Biden hadn't had his huge increase. And that would be pretty amazing if we can accomplish it.
Amen to that. Well, that is Phil Kerpen, folks. He is the president of American Commitment. Get the Unleash Prosperity hotline, which he helps write every week. Just go to unleashprosperity.com. Thanks so much for joining, Phil, and we will be right back. This is The More Money Show.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is The More Money Show, and thank you so much for joining this afternoon. Hope you're having a wonderful weekend. I want to just close out by talking about something that I think is the number one financial scandal in America today. And it is something that I've talked about in previous weeks, but it's something that makes me quite angry. I think Americans should be angry about it, especially as I'm thinking about this a lot now because my fourth son, I have 3 sons of my own and I have 2 stepsons. My fourth son is now going off to college, and it's going to cost us something like $60,000 a year. $60,000. And it's not Harvard, it's not Yale, it's not Princeton, it's not it's a good school, but $60,000? I've got to tell you, folks, I believe that the greatest financial swindle in America is how much these higher education institutions, the colleges and universities, are charging our families. It's outrageous. There has to be something done about this. Why are these universities charging so much money? to our families, when at the same time they get tax-free endowments that are in the hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars. By latest estimates, there are $850 billion just sitting in the vaults of these universities. And they're not using that money to lower the tuition and make college more affordable for families. And this is a disgrace. It's an outrage. And so what I have been advocating is that we put a tax on the endowments. And the reason for that is because these endowments, the money that, if you get somebody who's a millionaire or a billionaire and they give a university, $100 million, that money was never taxed. So the person who earned the $100 million doesn't have to pay tax on it. They get it write it off, and the university doesn't have to pay tax on it. It's one of the biggest scams in America, these write-offs for universities. And I believe we should start taxing these things. I think that we should put a 15 or 20% tax on these endowments because it was not taxed. And so what you're getting is more and more money flowing into these universities. At the same time, they're increasing the college tuition. Does that make sense to you? I mean, how about this? We should say to any university that doesn't freeze its tuition for the next 10 years, because every university is way, way too expensive. There may be a few exceptions, that they don't get a write-off on their taxes. When you've got $800 billion lying around, these are like financial institutions now. They're not even universities. They're not educating people. They're managing other people's money and building these huge storehouses of wealth. Meanwhile, why is it that the universities are not teaching the traditional subjects like American history? How many of these kids are majoring in things like math or engineering? No, they're majoring in psychology and ethnic studies and in all sorts of pottery and all these things that have nothing to do with getting a good job when you graduate. And so this is one of my crusades. It really is. I want to see Congress go after these endowments and tell these folks, yes, you can make a contribution, but you're not going to be able to write it off. You're not going to be able to write that off because these are no longer charitable. These are not charitable institutions. They're financial institutions, for goodness sakes. And they're making all this money, and they're not passing the money on to the families or the kids. And so let's do that. And we did a tiny little tax in the tax bill on these university endowments, but it wasn't big enough. We're running a $2 trillion deficit a year. I have a good idea how we can lower that deficit. Let's start taxing these endowments. And, look, I feel the same way about why not put a cap on how much people can deduct from their tax. If you make over $1 million, we're going to lower your tax rate. Let's say right now the highest tax rate is 37%. Let's lower that to say 32%, but we're going to cap how much deductions you can take. That would be hugely pro-growth, and it would move us more in the direction of a flat and simple tax system. There is so much we could do to make the American economy more effective and more productive. I'm very excited, by the way, folks, about what's going on with the AI revolution. We're going to be talking a lot about that in the weeks ahead. I just started I'm on the board of a company called Lightspeed. We build houses with robots. It's the most amazing technology. You can look it up on the internet, lightspeed.com. But these kinds of changes are coming. They're going to make the American economy hyper productive. It's like when the tractor changed our economy 100 years ago, and it used to be 35 Americans out of every 100 were working in agriculture, and now it's like 2 out of 100. And we could see that kind of change happening with artificial intelligence. And it means people will be doing other kinds of jobs that we won't have to do the grunt work that people used to do, because we now have computers to do that, just like we had robots. We had tractors back 100 years ago that did a lot of the farm work for us and the irrigation system. So we are at the cusp of a very exciting period. I wish I could live, I'm 65 years old, so I don't have that much time to go. But a lot of these cool technologies are coming very quickly. I really believe in the next 25 years, we have the capacity to solve, through the Human Genome Project, coming up with cures for virtually every disease. It's going to be an amazing future. But you know what? To make that happen, we have to let the free enterprise system work. It's not going to come from government. It's not going to come from Congress. It's not going to come from the president. It's not going to come from state legislatures. It's going to come from our great entrepreneurial class that is going to make the world a much, much better place. As I said earlier, I'm really, really bullish on the U.S. economy right now. I think we are in the beginning stages of a big, big boom that's going to raise everyone's income. As John F. Kennedy said, a rising tide lifts all boats. And that's coming, folks. So this is a great country. We're lucky to be Americans. How about this tax that people in many states are talking about with respect to sugar drinks and sodas? That makes me pretty angry too. Look, I'm not an addict to any drugs, but I'm kind of addicted to Coca-Cola. I mean, I love. I remember one time we took a 10-day river cruise where we were out in the middle of nowhere, and we didn't have access to a lot of the normal things that you get at the grocery store. And I remember when we got back after 10 days, and like, what were you craving? And I was craving a Coca-Cola, and I just I love Coke and I'm addicted to it. And now they want to say you can't have sugar drinks, you can't have they want to get rid of Dr. Pepper and all these things. And here's my thought about this. Why can't people decide for themselves? Why do we have to have these busybodies, these nanny state Democrats and sometimes Republicans too, who are going to tell you what you can and can't drink? It's on the, it's on the can, it's on the bottle how much sugar there is in these things. I'm holding right now a mug root beer, and it tells you how much sugar is in it, how much sodium is in it, how much corn syrup is in it, caramel color. I'm just reading this sodium benzolate. I don't even know what that is. But the point is, why can't people make up their own decisions? One of the problems with our society today, and so, by the way, some of the Make America Healthy Again people are like this too. And my wife is big into this stuff, and I want to make America healthy again. And she's right that obesity is a big problem in America, but I don't want the government telling us what we can and can't eat and what we can and can't drink. It's so ironic to me that so many of my liberal friends who said, oh, legalize heroin, legalize cocaine, it's your body. You can put into it whatever you want. It's my body, my choice. Okay, fine. I'm a libertarian. Your body, your choice. Well, can't I buy a Coke that has sugar in it? I remember the mayor of New York, Mike Bloomberg, wanted to take away big gulps from people. That should be your choice. And I don't want busybody, nanny state politicians telling us what we can and can't buy, what kind of food we can buy, what kind of drinks we can buy, how much alcohol we can consume. Those are decisions that belong in the family and in the individual, not by government. And we're seeing more and more of this. I mean, you can't have an air conditioner because we have to worry about climate change. We're going to have the government regulate your thermostat. What do you think about that? To make sure it's not too cold or you're not wasting energy. These are the kinds of things that are going along with this nanny state. We got to stop it, folks. This is America. You're free to choose. And that is my lesson for today. So have a great week, and we will be back same bat time, same bat channel on the More Money Show next Saturday.
Thanks for listening to More Money with Steve Moore. You can hear More Money with Steve Moore Saturday afternoons at 1. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
77 WABC invites you to a family fun day and softball showdown on July 20th with net proceeds benefiting Shriners Children's. John Sterling will call the game as the FDNY takes on the NYPD with special guests Dwight Gooden, Art Shamsky, 77 WABC hosts including Sid Rosenberg, Anthony Cumia, Lionel, Dominic Carter, and many more. For more info and to buy tickets, go to ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org. That's ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org.